We'll just forget the last 30 minutes of the world happened. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully everybody can see me. If you can see me, that's fantastic. If you can't, there's literally nothing else I can do about it. But I will let you know. Well, you can't hear me either, so there's no point in talking to you. But if you can hear me and if you can't see me, what's up? This is Mark K. Saves the Republic. Man, I'll tell you what. I hate technology. I hate big tech. This is why we need Elon Musk in a position of power. This is why we need Elon Musk to make not only the government great again, but the entire world great again. I had a great opening plan too, but in the 30 minutes it took me to fix the software problems, all of a sudden I realized that the deep state won the Senate, and we're going to have another 2 years of Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell 2.0, aka Senator John Thune, is the new Senate Majority Leader. Rick Scott lost in the first ballot by 2 votes. It was 13 for Scott, 15 for Cornyn, the rest for John Thune, and so the deep state won, which is kind of disappointing. But look, hopefully they'll be able to get Donald Trump's appointments through. Hopefully they'll be able to get Donald Trump's agenda through. Hopefully it won't be as detrimental to the MAGA agenda as we would hope. It is kind of disappointing though when you look at your senators, and there's a lot of senators came forward, and there were 8 of them at last count who said, yes, I support President Trump. Yes, I support Rick Scott. I support Rick Scott for Majority Leader. I'm not looking for more of this Mitch McConnell crap. So that is positive that we had some people come forward and say that. There were 13 votes, which means that there were 5 people who didn't want to come forward and say they were voting for Rick Scott. I don't know what that's all about, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. The Senate Majority Leader was kind of that battle was a lost battle, and that was a dark cloud on an otherwise exciting election season. And I'll tell you what, what's really exciting is when you look at all of these cabinet appointments. By the way, the rumor is false, folks. There's zero truth to the rumor that you may have heard. I saw it online trending, but I will tell you this. I am not in contention for the Canadian ambassadorship. I will not be the ambassador to Canada. If I were presented with the opportunity to be the Canadian ambassador, I would 100% say absolutely not. I would much rather be here with you fine folk every single day than have to go and suffer living in that god-awful country anymore. But look, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Big meeting today. There was a big meeting today between President Trump and President Biden. This was their transition meeting, and it went, we're not really sure how we got a glimpse at the beginning. They had a roaring fire. I don't know whose job it was to light the fire for this meeting, but man, they gave it their all. Whoever's job it was to light this fire was like, this is going to be the most watched fire in history. I am going to make it as big as possible. Look at this.
Mr. President-elect and former President. Thank you. Donald, congratulations.
Thank you.
And looking forward to having like we said, a smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So
good.
Welcome
Thank you
back.
very much. And thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. And a transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Jim.
You're welcome.
I mean, it's almost distracting, that fire. It was like, how like fire, I don't know if you've ever stared at fire, but sometimes fire can be very mesmerizing. I was just like watching it. I was like, oh my gosh, that's the biggest fire. I got a little concerned because sometimes when you build a fire, they get a little out of control, right?
President,
Look
at that thing.
And former President.
It's got to be warm. It's got to be hot in that meeting room for a couple of reasons. But look, Donald Trump, he returned to the White House for the first time in 4 years. And it's the first time since he left the White House that he's been back there. He sat down with Joe Biden, something they never did before, because in 2020, Donald Trump was still fighting the election. He was still fighting the results in court. He didn't think that the number of votes counted were accurate, and he wanted to get his legal recourse. So he nixed the meeting. He said, no, I'm not meeting with you. You're not the president-elect yet. I haven't conceded. He never did concede that election. So this is the first time there's been a transitory meeting between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And just so happens it's Donald Trump and Joe Biden flip-flop from what the other meeting would have been. The last time this meeting happened, it was Donald Trump and Barack Obama. And Barack Obama was sitting in the very chair that Joe Biden's sitting in right now, and Donald Trump was sitting in, while the very chair that Donald Trump was sitting in. So that was pretty exciting stuff. Also exciting, Donald Trump has this tendency, this ability. I don't know how he does it, but he has this way of making he has this way of making the transition, or the transition team's political appointments really entertaining. You know, like never before in the history of the world have we had a situation where people were just waiting with bated breath, eager to see and hear what was happening. They were just, never before has this been a thing where people were like, wow, another presidential appointment's coming in. Let's see who it is this time. Or, wow, I'm so excited to see who the Secretary of the Interior is going to be. I mean, we have so many political superstars and so many political celebrities, and this has been such a mandate. And everybody knows, look, I mean, in the past, we know how Washington worked. You got elected. And if you got elected, it was because you had big donors. And if you got elected and you won, your big donors then got ambassadorships, and they got cabinet positions, and they were rewarded because that's what you did. You rewarded the people that helped you get where you were with cabinet positions. And the people usually that helped you get where you were either big money donors or they were longtime presidential bureaucrats. And this time it's a little different. Because, look, I'm not saying Elon Musk didn't give money to Donald Trump's campaign, but Elon Musk is a total Washington outsider. I mean, the guy's from South Africa. He's a tech titan. He's, he's not your typical bureaucrat. Vivek Ramaswamy just literally jumped into the political arena this go round. And now all of a sudden he's got a great position. In fact, Donald Trump put Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy in charge of the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE. And what we're starting to see here, what we're starting to experience is the Elon Musk methodology to how he ran Twitter and how he runs really all of his businesses. And what happened with Elon Musk is that he went into Twitter. I don't know if you remember this, but he went into Twitter, and the first thing he said was, we're gonna streamline. He got rid of 2/3 of the workforce. There was a massive auction because he was like, we don't need all of this stuff. We don't need all of these people. We don't need all this office furniture. We don't need all these computers. They had all this. And so Elon Musk auctioned it all off. He closed the San Francisco headquarters. He goes, we have way too many people working here, and it's cutting into our bottom line. And that's exactly what he's now going to do for the government. And Elon, and I had all this stuff pulled up earlier, but when we had our technical difficulty, I had to restart my thing. So anyway, but Elon Musk, he's not only has he been tasked, along with Vivek Ramaswamy, of trying to cut down government waste and streamline the government and make sure that we don't have all these pork-filled projects and these duplicate departments and redundancies, because that's what it is. It's all about redundancies. It's all about spending your money on things you don't need so that the government, your bureaucrats can continue to live these cush lifestyles. And what he's going to do is he's going to work with Vivek, and the reason they're teamed up is because, look, Elon Musk, he runs a bunch of companies. He's got Tesla, he's got the Starlink, he's got, the rocket company, SpaceX. He's got all these different, he's got X that he's got, he's constantly tweeting. All of these things are going on. He's got a lot of balls in the air. He's got a lot of companies he's got to keep afloat. So he doesn't have the time to dedicate day to day to the DOGE, to the Department of Government Efficiency. And what's happening, what we're realizing now, is that Vivek Ramaswamy can work in conjunction with Elon and kind of be the day-to-day manager. And they're going to make recommendations. They don't have power to fire anybody, but they've been tasked with finding out where the waste is. They've been tasked with finding out what needs to be cut. They will then report back to Donald Trump's ever-growing team of responsible MAGA conservatives, and then those people will do all the firing. I mean, it's really a great job. Think about this. You get to go in and say, all these people are overpaid and their jobs aren't really necessary, so we need to fire them. And this entire department probably should go. But then you don't have to be the bad guy and walk in and actually fire anybody because you don't have that authority. You just report to the people and say, this is what we need to cut. And then someone else has to go in there and hand out all the pink slips. It's really a fantastic position for these gentlemen to be in. And it's one that they're both well suited for. Elon Musk he's been waiting for this moment. He's been waiting for this moment pretty much all his life. And look, he tweeted this out. He wrote, and this is very exciting, and this is very different than what happens in government typically. All actions of the Department of Government Efficiency will be posted online for maximum transparency. Anytime the public thinks we are cutting something important or not cutting something wasteful, just let us know. We will also have a leaderboard for most insanely dumb spending of your tax dollars. This will be both extremely tragic and extremely entertaining. Reminds me a lot of Joe Biden. That's how the Department of Government Efficiency is going to have a leaderboard so that we can see what departments are being cut, what departments aren't being cut, and we can look at to see where the biggest and the dumbest waste of spending is. It'll be both extremely tragic and extremely entertaining, which is, again, how I describe Joe Biden's entire life. More on that coming up, though. So Elon Musk, not only is he excited about bringing down the size of the government, not only is he excited about changing the course of our history and making sure that we are run efficiently, but he's going to gamify it. And he's going to let us all watch. He's going to bring us all along for the ride. So I'm very excited. Very excited to hear about that. Now, something else that is really interesting, something else that has been happening is that Donald Trump made an appointment yesterday, which a lot of people are like, whoa, where did that come from? I myself had to do a double take. I was watching Fox News yesterday, and Fox News was reporting that Donald Trump had just announced Pete Hegseth was going to be the new Secretary of Defense. And when I saw Fox News and I saw Pete Hegseth and I saw Secretary of Defense, for a minute I thought Pete Hegseth was talking about the new Secretary of Defense, or Pete Hegseth was going to meet with, I just thought he was live on TV. As soon as I realized what was going on, I realized Pete Hegseth is going to be the Secretary of Defense. And I thought, well, that is an interesting choice. Pete Hegseth is the weekend anchor for Fox and Friends, one of them, and a military veteran, very decorated, 2 Bronze Stars. He did tours in Guantanamo Bay and Iraq and Afghanistan. He's been all over the place. Military veteran, worked for 20 years in the military, actively, has written books on the subject, worked with veterans, worked to make sure that our troops in their lowest moments of the last 4 years have felt that they were appreciated and respected and vindicated. And he's worked diligently on Fox News as well to be a voice for the military men and women who don't like what's been going on in the military. He's been a voice for the military establishment and the troops and the soldiers. And he's been a guy who's been speaking on television for 8 years now about how bad things are in the military, especially with all this woke crap and the DE&I initiatives that have been going forward. So Pete Hegseth, a great choice. But at first it was really kind of like, everyone's like, it came out of left field. And so I texted Brian Kilmeade, and I said, hey, are you going to be Secretary of the Treasury? And he said no, because, he's not, his sense of humor isn't what mine is. But for those of you that are unfamiliar with Pete Hegseth outside of Fox News, he did an interview recently on a podcast. And in that podcast interview, he basically outlined, and I don't know if he was auditioning for the job, or I don't know if he was, if he thought, hey, maybe this could be a thing, but he basically outlined his plan for what he would do if he controlled the military. He outlined his plan on how to make our military great again. And the irony is now, just weeks later, this entire plan that he put forth on the podcast, this plan is exactly what's going to happen.
Well, first of all, you got to fire, you got to fire the chairman of Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. Obviously you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever, that was involved in any of the DEI woke, it's got to go. Either you're in for war fighting, and that's it. And that's the only litmus test we care about. You got to get DEI and CRT out of military academies, so you're not training young officers to be baptized in this type of thinking. And then, whatever the standards, whatever the combat standards were, say, in, 1995, let's just make those the standards. And as far as recruiting, to hire the guy that, did Top Gun Maverick and create some real ads that motivate people to want to serve.
By the way, that's a huge problem. I love the idea that he's going to get the producer of Jerry Bruckheimer is his name, by the way. Do you think Jerry Bruckheimer, now that, because Jerry Bruckheimer, somebody called him and said, hey, Pete Hegseth said in this podcast that you should do all the military recruiting ads. And now Pete Hegseth is in charge of the military recruiting ads. Do you think Jerry Bruckheimer's like sitting by the phone going, come on, Pete, I'm ready. I mean, who doesn't want a government contract? Although under Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, those government contracts are going to be less and less valuable than they were, just about a month ago. Well, than they are right now. As a matter of fact. But Pete Hegseth is a guy with a plan. He's like, look, this is a fighting force. The military, and this is something everyone, he's not the only one. Everybody knows that this is a fighting force. This is something that is, the military is there to fight and win wars. And if you're training them on ridiculous, stupid stuff that is unconsequential to fighting and winning wars, then that is a waste of time and effort and money. And it is really insulting to the people that are there to fight and win wars. And it's also demotivating to other people who might want to go into the military. And when we were interviewing our good friend Mike Waltz the last time, one of his big concerns was military recruitment. Because when military recruitment goes down, the country becomes less safe. When people see these bizarre videos that Joe Biden puts out with the Navy, when he sees that Joe Biden is more concerned about whether or not pregnant women have comfortable flight suits, when he sees that, you need to stop calling your fellow service men and women, you have to start calling them theys and thems. And I mean, it's all just displaced political garbage, when really what we need to train these men and women to do is to fight and win wars with as few casualties as possible. Pete Hegseth knows that. He served for 20 years. And Mike Waltz said recruitment is down across the board. In some branches, it's down 50%. I think it was the Army was down 50%. That's huge. That's a really bad thing to do. We've lost about 3 or 4 years of new recruits. Unless we can get those people back in the military, unless we can re-inspire young people to join the military and make it a respectable profession or option for at least a few years of your life, then we're going to really suffer at the hands of some of these other countries, these larger militaries. China, for example, they've been taken. China, they're geniuses. Sure, they may be evil communists, but they're not dumb. They lend us money. Every time we need money, they lend it to us. And then they take the interest that we're paying them on that money, and they're buying nuclear submarines, and they're paying their soldiers a fortune. They're buying new military weaponry. They're devising intergalactic weapon systems that rival and sometimes surpass those of our own, even though we have a space force. They're using our money that we pay them willingly to invest in a military that can destroy us, meaning we are investing in our own destruction. This is something that I've discussed at length with Congressman Mike Waltz, soon to be National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who, can we just take a minute to remember the time that Mike Waltz and I shared an ice cream cone in my studio?
We're rolling Joe Biden style with Congressman Mike Waltz.
You're going to break some international news, announce some ceasefires, talk about a trip to the border.
I didn't know my good friend is going to be at the border, too. Oh.
Yeah. That's what that was about. That was some good ice cream. By the way, fun fact, Congressman Mike Waltz threw his ice cream cone in what he thought was a trash can, but it was actually the mail bin. And everybody's mail was covered with vanilla ice cream. And when I told him about it, he laughed. Because that's what Mike Waltz does. He laughs in the face of danger and also ice cream in the mail bin. Again, we congratulate him. We congratulate him on becoming the next National Security Advisor. Now, Pete Hegseth, as you can imagine, was a shocking choice to a lot of different people in the media. I thought it was a great choice for another reason, not just because he's youthful, not just because he is a military expert, but because by appointing Pete Hegseth, literally a captain. I mean, this guy's literally Captain America. Good looking, this guy looks like a superhero. This is his Clark Kent, right? This is Pete Hegseth, Clark Kent, and then there's danger, we need a hero. And he rips off his coat, and then all of a sudden he becomes Pete Hegseth, big government sucks superhero with his We the People tattoo on his arm. What we realize now is that Donald Trump is creating this young, powerful, smart cabinet of real life superheroes. And the best thing about this is that every other major network, CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, every single major news network had to report on Pete Hegseth from Fox News becoming the next Secretary of Defense. And you know that the people at Fox News were just thrilled, and the people at all those other networks were like, oh my God, what? We actually have to say the words Fox News. Every time I turned the channel, all I saw was Fox News on CNN, Fox News on MS. It was just brilliant. It was genius. And I know that's not the reason he was chosen. It's just like an added, it's like the cherry on top, we'll just say. It's the cherry on the top. Now, as you can imagine, the ladies on The View had some stuff to say about Pete Hegseth's appointment.
That's not true.
So is this the guy who's qualified to make decisions about the most powerful military in the world, who clearly does not know anything about the military?
You know what?
Okay, hold on. Wait, whoa. Okay, look. Is this the right choice? A guy to lead the strongest military in the world who clearly doesn't know anything about the military? Where is Whoopi Goldberg getting her information? Pete Hegseth knows nothing about the military. Let me just show you let me pull this up real quick. This is from Donald Trump's announcement. Donald Trump made an announcement because that's what he does. He just releases these announcements on Truth Social and on Twitter. I am honored to announce that I have nominated Pete Hegseth to serve in my cabinet as the Secretary of Defense. Pete has spent his entire life as a warrior for the troops and for the country. Pete is tough, smart, and a true believer in America first. With Pete at the helm, America's enemies are on notice. Our military will be great again, and America will never back down. Pete is a graduate of Princeton University and has a graduate degree from Harvard University. This guy's not just a military hero. He's an he went to the 2 top schools in the country. He went to Princeton, and it was like, that's the number 1 school in the country. What should I do next? Maybe I'll go to the number 2 school in the country. And he went to Harvard for his graduate degree. He's an Army combat veteran. He did tours in Guantanamo Bay, Iraq, Afghanistan, 2 Bronze Stars, the Combat Infantryman's Badge. He's worked with military and veterans. He wrote a book called The War on Warriors, which spent 9 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. The book reveals the left-wing betrayal of our warriors and how we must return our military to meritocracy, lethality, accountability, and excellence. Pete has also led 2 veterans advocacy organizations leading the fight for our warriors and our great veterans. Nobody fights harder for the troops, and Pete will be a courageous and patriotic champion of America. So there you go. So that is the full bio of Pete Hegseth. Yet for some reason, Whoopi Goldberg says he doesn't know anything about the military. This best-selling author of 2 books on the military, this guy who spent time fighting in Iraq and Guantanamo Bay and Afghanistan, this guy who has 2 Bronze Stars, he doesn't know anything about the military.
That's not true.
So is this the guy who's qualified to make decisions about the most powerful military in the world, who clearly does not know anything about the military?
You know, and also I feel insulted. I'm a morning TV host, and I've been here the longest.
Yes.
Where's my ambassadorship to Italy, Donald? Was it something I said?
Beyond what he's saying just about women, the scary part.
By the way, I'm all about giving Joy Behar a one-way ticket out of here. I mean, maybe not Italy, but there's got to be some country that needs an ambassador who, appreciates kind of like a whiny old Karen. I think I love the idea of giving Joy Behar an ambassadorship. Give them all ambassadorships. Give them all something to do, because clearly they're clearly, I think America's getting sick and tired of. Although Whoopi Goldberg needs her job. I don't know if you heard this clip. This is Whoopi Goldberg. You really can't take what this woman says seriously, especially when she says Pete Hegseth doesn't know anything about the military. Whoopi Goldberg said something yesterday on The View, which I didn't want to let pass without mentioning, because it's just so ridiculous. And it just goes to show how out of touch these people are, how condescending they are, and how dumb they think the rest of us are. They were talking about, they're still harping on the fact that Kamala Harris lost, and they just can't believe that Donald Trump won with the help of blue-collar workers, of middle-class Americans. They just can't believe that the economy under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris was so bad that it led all of these blue-collar, hardworking Americans to vote for somebody like Donald Trump. Listen to what Whoopi Goldberg said about the working class.
I'm sorry. When you have one candidate who has been running for 12 years, who lies and changes things. I appreciate that people are having a hard time. Me too.
Yeah.
I work for a living. If I had all the money in the world, I would not be here. Okay? So I'm a working person, you know? And my kid has to feed her family.
Okay, so Whoopi Goldberg says, I have to work too. I'm the working class. I have to be here. If I had all the money in the world, I wouldn't be here. And my daughter's got to work too. Now, this is really a weird thing to say because Whoopi Goldberg doesn't have to work, or maybe she doesn't understand what having to work means. In fact, if you go, let me go to Google real quick and pull it up because, like I said, I had to shut down all my stuff. Whoopi Goldberg net worth. Let's see what Whoopi Goldberg's net worth is. Oh, here we go. Look at this. This is from Afrotech. Wait, something went wrong. Hang on, let me clip on here. Whoopi Goldberg is an American comedian, actress who makes $8 million per year. And it says Whoopi Goldberg earned a $60 million net worth. And she wonders who she's going to leave it to. Oh, look at this one from E! Online. Whoopi Goldberg reveals who she wants to inherit her $60 million fortune. 60 mil. She claims that she needs to work. She doesn't need to work. If she stopped working right now, if she was physically unable to work right now, she could go home and probably live fairly comfortably off of her $60 million fortune. That is not working class. That is elite. That is the 1% of the 1% in this country. Whoopi Goldberg has more money than, I'm a little shocked that Whoopi Goldberg has a net worth of $60 million, but look, God love her. Whoopi Goldberg thinks that she's working class, that she has to work, and she's sitting on a nest egg of 60 mil. And she's wondering who I'm going to give to. My daughter. My daughter's got to work too. My daughter needs food. Woman, give your daughter some food. You have $60 million. You can't cough up some Publix gift cards for your daughter?
I'm sorry. When you have one candidate who has been running for 12 years, who lies and changes things, I appreciate that people are having a hard time. Me too.
Yeah.
You are not having a hard... You do not understand what a hard time is. Unless you're having a hard time understanding basic concepts of stuff. Anyway, that's the view. But the views, they're totally off their rocker. And in fact, I know that there's talk of a lot of media cuts. There's talk of a lot of people cutting back. I know that MSNBC is on the chopping block, and we'll talk about that. CNN is about to fire a whole bunch of people, and we'll talk about that as well. But I believe that the View is safe. I believe that, and in fact, I think here's what you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of the, I don't want to say legitimate news because they're all pretty illegitimate, but you're going to see the crackpots on the left are going to thrive. Okay. They're not, the View's not going anywhere. The View is probably ABC's highest rated TV show. And the more and more conservative that this country gets, the more and more we see, the Senate become Republican and the House of Representatives stays Republican. And the more and more we see these Republican and conservative governors and these legislatures and all that kind of stuff, the more now that they realize the country is more like Donald Trump than Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, I think the more the media is going to lean into the opposite of that, because you need it. You need conflict. You need an enemy. You need that common enemy. And so the media is going to, they're not going to glom on to pro-Trump, pro-conservative people, at least not for the long haul. They're going to keep their wackadoodles around. And that's why I think the View is safe. Listen to what Sunny Hostin, which by the way, I legit thought her name was Hotson, but apparently it's Sunny Hostin. Listen to what Sunny Hostin had to say about the upcoming holidays and whether or not you should break bread with your Trump-loving and Trump-voting relatives.
Whatever your reason is, I would never let my politics be the reason I don't show up to see my family, because they won't always be there.
I'm going to disagree. I completely understand her point, because I really do feel that this candidate, President-elect Trump, is just a different type of candidate. From the things he's said and the things he's done and the things he will do, it's more of a moral issue for me. And I think it's more of a moral issue for other people. We're just, I would say it was different when, let's say, Bush got elected. You know, you may not have agreed with his policies, but you didn't feel like he was a deeply flawed person, deeply flawed by character, deeply flawed in morality.
Like a lot of Dems called him deeply flawed and humanized him.
But you got to admit, they're very different figures. I mean, you know, you along with Milley and along with John Kelly warned us about how deeply flawed he was as a candidate. And so I think when people feel that someone voted not only against their families, but against them and against people that they loved, I think it's okay to take a beat.
Like him.
Okay, so Sunny Hostin wants to keep the separation and wants to keep the anger and the animosity going. She doesn't want families to come together for Thanksgiving or Christmas. She wants you to say, okay, this person voted for Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a deeply flawed candidate. And so this person's vote for Donald Trump, a deeply flawed candidate, was clearly an attack on me. And if my relatives are going to attack me personally, then I don't want to have anything to do with them for Thanksgiving or Christmas. That's Sunny Hostin's rationalization as to why you should not interact with anyone in your family who voted for Donald Trump. And that's why she's trying to, they're continuing to drive a wedge because listen, unity does not help the Democrat Party. They only survive on division. They only survive when people seem like there's nowhere else to go. That's how cults work. When you have somebody who feels like they're despondent and they're disconnected from their family and they have no brothers, sisters, friends, they have no community, they just don't fit in anywhere. That's when these cults come in. They swoop in and they go, oh no. You fit in with us. It's okay. You fit in with us. You don't know whether you're a man or a woman. It's okay. We feel the same. We got you. You think Donald Trump is a deeply flawed candidate and you don't understand why your family voted him? It's okay. Come over here. Have Christmas dinner with us. We'll take care of you. They try to actively separate people from their families, from their friends, from their communities, so they can build up their own numbers with these people who are a little off kilter. And Sunny Hostin wants people to remember that. That's what we do. You cannot tell people to go and have Thanksgiving and Christmas with their friends and family members who voted for Trump, because how are we going to recruit people? We need people to be cut off from society. We need people to be cut off from their family units. We need people to have zero bond with anybody. That way we can come in, bond with them, and convince them to do and say and vote for anyone that we put forward. Hence the reason Kamala Harris got 60 million votes. And Sunny Hostin wants everyone to remember that. The division will continue, and these crackpots in the media are going to stick around no matter what. They're going to be there because they now have content for days. Every single day they can wake up and they can say, okay, what did Donald Trump do today? And how can I make that a bad thing? What did Donald Trump do today? And how can I turn that into a shocking clickbait headline? What did Donald Trump do today? And how can I convince people that it was evil and bad and stupid and wrong? Case in point, what they're doing with Pete Hegseth. The View woke up today and said, okay, Pete Hegseth was named Secretary of Defense. We should investigate. This is typically what would happen. A journalist would investigate and say, okay, let's see. If we're going to have Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense, maybe we look into his military record. Maybe we look into why Donald Trump chose him. Maybe we start by reading the actual press release. No, they see Fox News host Pete Hegseth, and they immediately say, disqualified.
That's not true.
So is this the guy who's qualified to make decisions about the most powerful military in the world, who clearly does not know anything about the military?
You know what?
Clearly does. And again, what is clear about Pete? The guy literally has "We the People" tattooed on his arm. He's got 2 bronze. What, if anything, he knows more about the military than most people because 20 years in service. For example, I feel like I know a decent amount about the military. Not as much as I should. I know a lot of people who've served in the military. I know a lot of people who work in the military. I know people who sit on the Armed Services Committee in the House of Representatives. But I'm pretty sure Pete Hegseth knows more about the military than I do. I know for a fact he does. I know for a fact he knows more about the military or how much it costs to survive in this country than Whoopi Goldberg does. Because Whoopi Goldberg thinks that this guy who spent 20 years in the military doesn't know anything about it, and that $60 million isn't enough to live on, so she's got to keep going back to work every single day. the more I hope to God the View doesn't go off the air, because it gives me, you got to have that common enemy. But there are some things that are happening out there. CNN, for example, CNN announced, did they announce it? Or here we go. Yeah, CNN is going to lay off hundreds of people. This is the continued decimation of the media industry. And look, I'll even argue that it started earlier this year. It started, but with Joe Biden in the White House, we saw all kinds of problems with the media. We saw all kinds of, everybody suffered. The advertising revenue went down. People weren't buying as many things, buying as many cars. They weren't, the advertising dollars dried up. People always cut marketing and advertising before they do anything else. And so the media had to shift. On online and digital, now that was a different story. Online and digital, you're seeing a boom. Well, CNN, ratings challenge CNN, according to the New York Post, is reportedly set for a major bloodbath. A major bloodbath. And this is, of course, not an actual bloodbath, because I know that a lot of times the media likes to misreport the word bloodbath, but they're set for an actual bloodbath. The cable network, which lagged behind rivals MSNBC and Fox News during last week's election night coverage, will implement layoffs that will impact hundreds of employees across the organization. This is coming from the insiders at CNN. Hundreds of employees across the organization. Thompson, who took over last year after the ouster of Chris Licht, will cull personnel from CNN's television production teams whose talents won't necessarily be needed in the new digital-first landscape, the outlet added. Now, I reported just the other day that Chris Wallace ditched. Chris Wallace, he left, man. He bolted out of CNN. He said, all right, Donald Trump's president, layoffs are coming. This is a new digital era. This is the era of the live stream and the podcast. This is an era that I need to be a part of. This is an era where TV personalities are no longer the trusted celebrities and superstars that they used to be. People get their information from this. People get their information from TikTok. They get their information from YouTube. They get their information from iTunes podcasts and Spotify. And he's right for a change. He's absolutely right. And so what we're starting to see is this shift away from traditional media to this non-traditional media, which I believe will soon be the traditional media, because that's where more and more of the eyeballs are going. Now, I was forced out of traditional media. I was forced out of the legacy media. They came to me and they said, get your crap and get out of here. And now I realize that it was probably really great timing for me, because now after this election, you're starting to see more and more legacy media realize they're no longer the big man on campus. They're no longer the BMOC. That's why Chris Wallace is starting a streaming service. In fact, I will tell you something and this is both promotion and patting myself on the back. I realized that podcasting was the future, not only when I started my podcast July 15th at the RNC. And two things I realized. Number one, it used to be when I went to the RNC in 2016, we went to Media Row, and I was there with my good buddy Herman Cain, Shugga-ducky, the News Nugget. You remember Herman Cain, God rest his soul. And Herman Cain and I broadcast every morning during his show, and I did a show at 6 o'clock at night, and it was in Cleveland, Ohio, and they transformed the entire parking garage next to the stadium there, next to the arena. They transformed it, and it was this big, beautiful, bustling media center for the week. And it was jam-packed with TV stations and radio stations. TV stations and radio stations. It was a huge facility, and you had some media like outlets, like for example, I think Google had a big booth there, and Rumble and YouTube, a couple of these other up and comers, maybe not Rumble back then, but a couple of these up and coming digital platforms. But it was mainly a line of radio stations from across the country and TV stations from across the country, and then the big Fox News and CNN and yada yada. This time around, when I went, I could count on one hand the number of radio stations that were there. It was me, a digital media outlet. It was Benny Johnson, a digital media outlet. Daily Wire, a digital media outlet. They had a huge booth, by the way. I mean, it was all of these massive media, alternative media outlets, online media outlets, podcasters. And there was Mike Gallagher was right next to me, Dan Bongino, who walks a fine line between both radio host and podcaster. So we'll count him for radio. Another guy from Chicago. And I think there was, and then iHeartRadio was there. There may have been one more. So 5. And it was all replaced with digital media. When I went to the TPUSA event in August in Tampa, and I broadcast from there 2 years ago. This was 2 years ago. I was on Media Row. I was the only radio station there. Everyone else was a digital brand. Digital media is where it's at. CNN is about to fire people. They're about to fire hundreds of people. And the reason they're firing people who are, quote, whose talents won't necessarily be needed in the new digital first landscape. Okay? Cameramen, audio professionals, digital Chiron operators. When you can produce an entire broadcast from your phone, like I do every single day, I'm going to show you. On my TikTok from last night, when Pete Hegseth and Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy were announced, I went on TikTok. I did a TikTok, and it's been maybe, 12, 13, 14. It's been like 16 hours. In 16 hours, my TikTok from last night has 4.2 million views. And it's titled, Trump appoints 3 celebrities to his cabinet. I did it on my phone. No script, no audio technician, no lighting tech, no makeup person. Pardon me. I just got on my phone. I started talking for 2 minutes about Donald Trump's appointments. Pete Hegseth will be the Secretary of Defense. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to set up the Department of Government Efficiency. 2 minutes, put it on TikTok, woke up this morning, 4 million people saw it. Nobody, not even 1 million people watched CNN last night when this announcement was in. When I post something on YouTube, it's hundreds of thousands of people, and it's direct. It's the truth. It's not fiction. It's not propaganda. It's not edited. It's not a lie. It's all accurate. My brand new podcast, and again, I want to share this with you because this is exciting. We started on Monday. Monday. Today's Wednesday. This is the 3rd day. Monday, I started a brand new podcast called The 47 Daily Podcast. The 47 Daily Podcast. On Monday, I said, welcome to the new podcast. We're going to give you the news about the Donald Trump administration. If there's news about the Donald Trump transition team, you're going to hear it here first. If there's news about Donald Trump's first 100 days, you're going to hear it here first. If there's news about Donald Trump's 4 years in the White House, you're going to hear it here first. Honest, unedited, direct from the source, no opinion, no propaganda, just what Donald Trump and his team are doing to make America great again. From the White House to my mouth to your ears. That was 2 days ago. Yesterday, we posted our second one. This morning, we posted our third. And I don't know if you can see this, but I have 70 reviews in 2 days. Thank you, by the way, to everybody who reviewed and downloaded the podcast. 70 reviews in just 2 days on a brand new podcast that is dedicated to all things Trump. Any and all news about Donald Trump for the next 4 years. Because people don't want to go to CNN anymore. They don't want to wait for Fox News. They don't want to wait until the news comes on. They need the information now. They want to get it on their time. They want to be able to turn on a podcast, know what's going on, pause it, come back to it, whatever it is. And that's why we created it. And if you'd like to hear it, we would love for you to subscribe. It's you can go to the47daily.com. The47daily.com will take you right to iTunes. It's also on Spotify if you'd prefer, but this link takes you directly to iTunes. Subscribe and listen. It's 20 minutes every single day, and it's just the news that you want. It's not that CNN stuff. It's not clickbaity. It's not, ooh, gotcha. It is just what Donald Trump and his team are doing today to help your life be better. The important stuff that you need to know. And then later on in the day, when you hear the same stories propagandized for the left, when you hear the same stories twisted and spun to make it seem like it's bad, but it's not, you can go, oh, wait, I know the truth. I heard about it on The 47 Daily. Go to www.the47daily.com. And thank you to all 70 people who've already left positive reviews. I appreciate it. If you haven't yet left a review, that'd be every little bit helps. That's the future. MSNBC is going on the chopping block altogether. Rachel Maddow and Morning Joe and Mika, I'm Super Crazy Brzezinski. Who else is on there? Oh, Joy Reid will be fine, by the way. I'm pretty sure. And that's the thing. Morning Joe will be fine. Meek is going to be fine. The crazier you are, the more you hate Trump, the longer you're going to be in business. I mean, when Rush Limbaugh said it once, God rest his soul, he was asked about it, and he said, I guess it was Bill Clinton lost the election to, Bill Clinton won twice, and then George W. Bush was coming back into power. And Rush Limbaugh was asked, and they said something about, somebody asked him, said, hey, I bet you're glad that George Bush is coming back to the White House, right? Or I bet you're glad that you're going to have a Republican in office. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Backtrack. It was Obama. George W. Bush was leaving office and Barack Obama was coming into office. And somebody asked Rush Limbaugh about it. And they said, I bet you're happy. I bet you're really glad that, they said, I bet you're upset. I bet you're upset that, Barack Obama's coming into office. How are you going to handle it? And he said, you know what? I feel like I'm going to have the best 4 years of my life, because the last time Bill Clinton was in office, my ratings soared. When his biggest periods of growth were during the Clinton presidency and during the Obama presidency. And during the George W. Bush years, it was okay. But Rush Limbaugh exploded during the Obama years because he was a vocal critic on the air every single day, and he gave Republicans a common enemy. And that's why Joe Scarborough is going to be fine, and Mika Brzezinski is going to be fine, and Joy Reid, because the crackpots that listen to them and watch them are going to need somebody to tell them why Donald Trump is the devil every single day of their life for the next 4 years. And they'll be happy to oblige. But the higher-ups at MSNBC, they are having a day, man. They know, look, they understand that there's a market, but they can't fill it or profit from it. So NBC parent company Comcast is weighing a spinoff of their declining cable networks. NBC, parent company Comcast, is exploring spinning off its struggling cable networks, including left-leaning MSNBC, President Mike Kavanaugh said Thursday. Kavanaugh revealed during the third quarter earnings call that the media giant is mulling the creation of a new, well-capitalized company owned by our shareholders and comprised of our strong portfolio of cable networks. The cable networks include MSNBC, CNBC, Bravo, E, Sci-Fi USA Network, and Oxygen True Crime. The possible separation would not include broadcast network NBC or streaming service Peacock. We choose not to participate in the M&A process around Paramount in the early of this year, but we would consider partnerships in streaming. So basically what's happening is, because Comcast has these networks that are not bringing in any money or viewers or revenue and are dragging down the rest of the company, they want to spin those off. You want to have people invest in the stuff that's making money, NBC and Peacock. Okay, we'll keep NBC and Peacock because those are strong brands. We'll keep the money makers making money, but we're going to take all these other networks that are doing absolutely nothing for us, and we're going to roll them off, and we're going to make them somebody else's problem. And maybe if they're packaged together with somebody who can do something with them. I mean, there are smaller companies that could benefit, but MSNBC could potentially be totally revamped. And yes, Rachel Maddow could be gone. And yes, Joy Reid could be gone, but I believe the big names will survive. And I believe it's going to be the rest of the people who are going to falter and who are eventually going to fail. Look, there's so much going on, by the way. And like I said, every single day, it's just so exciting to see how much new stuff has popped up. One of the big questions now that comes up is what's going to happen? Because, Donald Trump, when Donald Trump went to Washington today, he did a couple of things. First of all, Donald Trump stopped in at the new Republican Congress. And he gave a speech and he shook hands and he told everybody, it's so nice to be here. He joked about how they could change the Constitution so that he could be president even longer, which of course the media glommed onto right away. But Donald Trump said, look, I love being here. Thank you so much. Congratulations to all of you. And I'm going to need your help and support making America great again. And then they broke and they were going to have their conference meetings. There's a big vote for the conference chair, which our good buddy Kat Kamak is up for and has been working diligently to get votes for. So all that stuff is going on. But one of the things that's really interesting is Donald Trump met with Speaker Mike Johnson. And I heard somebody on the news, it may have been on Fox News, said, I imagine Speaker Johnson is going to Donald Trump and saying, hey, congratulations on your cabinet, but could you please stop pilfering my people? You're taking away conservatives out of a very small conservative majority. For example, Congressman Mike Waltz from District 6, who's leaving Congress, and he is going to go and he is going to be the next national security advisor. Then we found out Elise Stefanik from New York, one of the most conservative representatives, and clearly one of the most conservatives from New York, where there's a lack of conservative representation, is being picked off to be the UN ambassador. And I imagine there's a bunch of other people in the Congress, Byron Donalds, for example. A lot of people look at Marjorie Taylor Greene. Matt Gaetz is a huge Donald Trump compatriot and advisor, always angling and probably ambitious to do more with whatever it is he's doing. But there's a lot of different things now that are happening. And the more you pick the best apples out of the barrel, the more the barrel's like, okay, can you please leave? Like, we need some good apples in here. We don't just need a whole bunch of Congressman John Rutherfords. We need some Mike Waltzes and Elise Stefaniks too. So I imagine that's how, and that was a good point. Whoever made it on Fox News, I imagine that is probably true. But there's a couple of big vacancies now, and people are saying, what's going to happen? Is Elise Stefanik's vacancy going to be filled by a conservative? The answer to that is 100% yes, because she does live in a conservative area of New York, and a special election will choose somebody who is going to go along with those ideals. J.D. Vance in the Senate. Mike DeWine gets to pick the person. Governor Mike DeWine gets to pick the person who fills that vacancy. And look, Governor Mike DeWine, he's done some weird things, like the whole COVID lottery thing. That was weird. There's been some decisions that he's made and some things that he said that has left me and a bunch of Ohioans scratching their heads going, WTF is Mike DeWine doing? Is this guy conservative or not? But I believe that when he's given this opportunity to choose a senator to replace J.D. Vance, a hyper-conservative, America first, small government conservative, I believe that he's going to do the right thing, or at least I hope to God he's going to do the right thing. And if he does, that means that we're going to have another great senator coming out of Ohio. Here in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis gets to decide who's going to be the senator. And yesterday, there were a couple names that were being floated around. Laura Trump was being floated around as a replacement for Marco Rubio when he becomes Secretary of State, which, again, is not yet official. That's the thing. People are making plans. People are throwing names out there. They're saying, who's Ron DeSantis going to choose when Marco Rubio becomes Secretary of State? I checked. Marco Rubio is not yet Secretary of State. It would be highly embarrassing for everybody if he were not Secretary of State at this point. I mean, everybody's been reporting it. Everybody's been talking about it. People are already planning their campaigns to the governor of the state of Florida to become the next senator. All the media personality are spitballing. If something happened, and change can always happen. You never know with Donald Trump. He may hear or say something or have an interaction with Marco Rubio that may make him change his mind. I don't think at this juncture he would. We know Vivek Ramaswamy is out of the running because he's been chosen for the Department of Government Efficiency. We know that also takes Vivek Ramaswamy out of the running for senator from Ohio. So he's not going to be in the Senate. He's going to be working with Elon. He's going to cut down the size of the government. Great. If Marco Rubio does become Secretary of State, as we all believe, then who's going to be the senator? Laura Trump is a name that I heard floated. She's a new Florida resident. She used to be from North Carolina, and she is a Trump. And while Ron DeSantis is a conservative, I don't know that Ron DeSantis would reward the opening in the Senate from the state of Florida to anyone with the last name of Trump. I just feel like, I feel like the meatball Ron comments still linger in the back of his head. I still feel like the meatball Ron attacks and the Ron DeSanctimoniouses. I know that they all was forgiven, and I know that Donald Trump said he's no longer Ron DeSanctimonious, and I know that he came to the convention and they hugged it out or whatever. I get all that. But there's still got to be something in the back of his head going, wow, how the turntables. And if Laura Trump wanted to be the senator, I imagine she'd be a great one. But it's Ron DeSantis' choice. And I just have to admit, he and Mrs. DeSantis are sitting there going, oh yeah, who's the meatball now? So again, I don't know that that's going to happen, but there are, as I pointed out, other people in the state of Florida who currently reside in Capitol Hill for a living. Matt Gaetz, which we mentioned earlier. Matt Gaetz has been a firebrand in the House of Representatives. He's the one who led the charge against ousting Kevin McCarthy. He's the one who led the charge against investigating Hunter Biden and introduced the Hunter Biden hard drive into the congressional record. He's the guy that speaks openly about term limits. He's the guy who led the charge on banning any and all congressional leaders or congressional representatives from ever entering the private sector as a lobbyist. He also doesn't think that Congress people should be able to trade stocks. He is all about reforming the government from the inside out. And losing him in the House of Representatives would be a shock to the system, but gaining him in the Senate might be beneficial to not just Floridians, but everybody. There's also Byron Donalds from Florida, and Byron Donalds was on the bottom of the short list for vice president, but he was also on the bottom of the short list for Speaker of the House. And Byron Donalds could be a power player, will be a power player in the future of politics, not just here in Florida, but nationally. And this would be a great way to put him on a larger national stage. But, you know, there is something to be said that every single time Donald Trump plucks an elected official out of their office and puts them in his cabinet, it does open up something else. And it could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. Mike Waltz, for example, in District 6, which is right next door. I mean, I'm in District 5. John Rutherford is my congressman. Really still not happy about that, but there's nothing I can do. But District 6 is right next door, and that was Ron DeSantis' district when he was in Congress. It's Mike Waltz's district now for the next 69 days or however long it is. And then somebody's going to have to run. There's going to be a special election, and somebody's going to have to come forward. And because I'm in close proximity, because it's my next door neighbor, because I have a lot of Catriots who live in St. Augustine, who live in St. Johns County, who live in Lakes, who live in the area that is represented by District 6. And because I'm so familiar with it, and because I know that we need conservative America First leadership that will be dedicated to President Trump's agenda, which is the American people's agenda, I will do my darndest. I don't know who's running. I don't know if anyone's expressed interest. I don't know if anyone's come forward and thrown their hat in the ring. But as soon as they do, I pledge that I will do what I can do from where I am to vet them, to get to know them, to interview them, to talk with them, and to say, are you really the best choice, not just for North Florida, but also to replace a staunch, small government, China hawk, anti-funding of Ukraine conservative in the Congress? And will you work with Mike Johnson and Donald Trump and whomever else to make sure that this agenda passes quickly? That's all I can do. I can't vote in the election because I don't live there, but I can sure as heck fire be a pain in their butt and make sure you know the what's up for grabs. And hopefully we can do whatever we need to do to get things done. The last time I backed a candidate publicly, it didn't work out the way necessarily I wanted it to, but I learned a lot. And we're not going to give up. We're going to continue to fight until we get the government that we want, the government that we need, the government that we deserve. So that's where we are. Now, there's a lot that still has to happen. There's a lot of cabinet positions which will be popping up. Donald Trump also did make a selection, and I don't even know if I have it here. Like I said, I lost when I restarted the stream today. I also restarted my computer and I lost all of the things that I'd pulled up. But let me see here. I think I have it. There's Elon Musk wearing sunglasses. Let me see if I can find it. I think I have it on my. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? Let me just pull up my X feed here real quick and see what I wanted to talk about that I missed. This is what I do, by the way. I just basically use X as my, I'll just retweet something or Rick Scott loses, Deep State wins. We covered that. Closer, that's positive. There they are chit-chatting. Oh, here it is. Perfect. President Trump announces White House senior staff. Mar-a-Lago, Florida. Today, President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, announced 4 top advisors from his historic presidential campaign will serve in the White House as senior staff. Dan Scavino. Dan Scavino should be no shocker and no stranger to anybody who's been following this campaign. Dan Scavino has been working with Donald Trump for years. He will return to the White House as an assistant to the president and deputy chief of staff. Scavino is a Trump campaign senior advisor and remains one of President Trump's longest serving and most trusted aides. There's a lot of deputy chiefs of staff, by the way. The way Donald Trump sets it, and this is really interesting because typically you would have in a White House, you would have chief of staff, you would have deputy chief of staff. Okay. And that's basically how government runs. There's one guy or girl at the top, and then there's another guy or girl underneath, and then that's it. But Donald Trump, remember, he's a businessman. He's a corporate guy. He knows that it's not enough to have one person underneath your president. The chief of staff is basically like the president of the company. And then you need multiple different vice presidents. You have a vice president in charge of sales, a vice president in charge of marketing, a vice president in charge of production, a vice president in charge of operations. You don't just have one person. So what he's doing is he's lining up a group of deputies, deputy chiefs of staff, and he is going to he's going to give them all specific duties. It looks like Dan Scavino is the leader or the number one deputy chief of staff, but then Stephen Miller returns to the White House, and he is the assistant to the president and deputy chief of staff for policy and homeland security. We talked at great length about how Stephen Miller was the architect and the person who executed the immigration plan the first time Donald Trump was so successful with stay in Mexico and building the wall and the separation of families, which the left demonized, but was really an effective way to keep people from crossing our border illegally. James Blair will serve as assistant to the president and deputy chief of staff for legislative, political, and public affairs. Blair was the Trump campaign and Republican National Committee political director, managing hundreds of staff and overseeing a wide portfolio. So this is legislative, political, and public affairs. Again, this will be the guy who works with the majority Republican Congress and Senate to make sure that Donald Trump gets his issues rubber stamped. Taylor Budowich will serve as assistant to the president and deputy chief of staff for communications and personnel. Whoever is chosen as the press secretary will report to Taylor Budowich. This is going to be a very interesting campaign. And what we're going to start to see is we're going to start to see it formulate very quickly. As far as press secretary goes, I've heard rumblings. I don't know who it's going to be yet. I like all of the people that I've heard rumblings about. I have a favorite. I don't know if my favorite's going to win, but you never know. You never know. And something else that happened was, and I want to make sure that I get, let me go back to my X feed and make sure that I have the correct information. Oh, I forgot to talk about Don Lemon, speaking of which. All right, this is helpful. Here we go. That's the great Elon Musk, Pete Hegseth. Who did I miss? Oh, John Ratcliffe. Did I talk about him? I don't think I did. Hang on. Let me pull that up because that's really exciting. Anyway, all right. So this is something we need to bring up. The CIA. Okay. The CIA is a very important and corrupt organization. And the CIA is something that Donald Trump has been not at odds with, but that it's been really interesting to see. Hold on one second. I gotta pull up the article that I wanted. Here we go. We'll just grab this one. Donald Trump chose John Ratcliffe to serve as his CIA director. Now, the interesting thing about John Ratcliffe is that I don't know if you remember, there was a listing of 51 quote unquote spooks, if you will, as they're called, 51 spies, 51 former intelligence operatives and agency heads and all these other people, 51 professional intelligence experts who wrote an op-ed and published an article and basically said the Hunter Biden laptop story is misinformation. It's government misinformation. It's Russian misinformation. That's what they said. And they all lied. It was all just a propaganda piece by the left. It was all just a way to try to distract you from the truth. It was all just a way to hurt Donald Trump. The Russians created Hunter Biden's laptop story. The Russians did. Well, John Ratcliffe, who was the DNI, hold on. I'll get it in a minute. My brain's overloaded today. But anyway, but he was in charge of the intelligence at the time, and he was the only one that came out and said publicly, they're all wrong. There's no information. There's no evidence to support that. There's no evidence that it's Russian misinformation. There's no evidence that the Russians planted the Hunter Biden laptop story. All the evidence actually points to the opposite. And the opposite that it points to is that this is legit, that Hunter Biden is an idiot, that this crackhead left his laptop at a store, and that this crackhead's laptop contains sensitive information about, well, not just photos of him doing crack and, putting M&Ms on his man parts, but also emails between him and his family and his business associates and somebody called the big guy who gets 10%, who we all believe is Joe Biden. And if the American public knew about that, it could have changed the course of the election in 2020. John Ratcliffe was one of the few people who said, from the intelligence community, that said this is false. He also defended Donald Trump in the very first impeachment hearing when he was a congressman from Texas. He was one of the people who on Donald Trump's impeachment defense team, and he defended Donald Trump, and he did so very well. it was a fool's errand because the majority in the House of Representatives stayed with the Democrats, and they eventually did impeach President Trump not once but twice. But he was a staunch supporter and advocate for President Trump in that first trial. So that's the guy that they put in charge of the CIA, a guy who will openly admit that CIA and intelligence operatives are corrupt and liars and politicized and working with Joe Biden in the White House to try to suppress the truth online from getting out. And he's a guy who supports Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form that he can. So the rooting out of the deep state will just, I mean, it's going to get pretty tricky in a lot of these places. We're still waiting on the FBI. We're still waiting to hear on a bunch of other appointments. We still don't know who the attorney general is going to be. And in Donald Trump's cabinet, the attorney general is going to be telling. Kash Patel was rumored to be CIA director. Kash Patel may still be attorney general. Either way, he's an added bonus to the administration, and I do hope that they find a place for him. Look, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. I do know that what and when it happens, we're going to let you know about it on the 47 Daily podcast. So make sure that you check it out. Go to 47 Day. Go to the 47daily.com, the 47daily.com, and download it. All right, listen, I got to go. I got to get on the phone with tech support. I got to go full Karen on some tech support people and let them know what happened. Oh, John Thune is speaking. I guess I should go listen to John Thune speak. I got to go full Karen on some tech support people and yell at them and scream at them and let them know what a travesty this is and accuse them of being deep state operatives and accuse them of being in bed with the left to try to thwart the truth from coming out. But look, I'm not going to stop. I will sit on the phone with tech support for hours if it's what it takes, because I am going to bring you this show every single day. It may not be right. It may be late, but better late than never. We are going to continue the fight. We're going to get you the information you need. We're going to get you the information you want. We're going to get it to you in an entertaining and timely fashion, just the way Donald Trump has been bringing you his cabinet choices in an entertaining and timely fashion. We're going to continue to bring you the news so you can stay informed. You can stay inspired. You can stay enlightened. And you can stay energized to fight, and save the Republic.